Deep in the heart of Black Hollow Forest, locals whisper about the Whisperer, a shadowy figure haunting the woods. Hikers, campers, and hunters vanish, leaving behind shredded tents and blood-stained soil. The forest is now a dark, forbidden place, except for those daring enough to test the legend. Jake, Mia, and Chris, thrill seekers, decide to camp in Black Hollow Forest despite the eerie rumors. Jake dismisses the legend as a story to keep people out. Chris, the skeptic, laughs it off, while Mia, hesitant, agrees to go, her fear outweighed by peer pressure. The drive to the forest is uneventful, but as they approach the trailhead, the atmosphere shifts. Trees seem taller, branches twist unnaturally, and a heavy fog rolls in, muffling sounds. The only noise is the crunch of leaves under their boots. They reach a clearing by a small lake and set up camp. As night falls, the forest becomes silent. The friends build a fire, joking and telling ghost stories to lighten the mood. But Mia feels watched, glancing over her shoulder, unable to shake the feeling. Jake notices Mia's discomfort and reassures her, saying it's just the woods playing tricks. However, Mia can't shake the feeling that something or someone is out there watching them. At midnight, Chris wandered into the woods to gather more firewood. He was gone longer than expected, and the others began to worry. "He's probably trying to scare us," Jake said, rolling his eyes. But when Chris finally returned, he was pale and trembling, clutching a bundle of sticks. "There's something out there," Chris whispered. "I saw. I don't know, man." He was standing by the lake, just staring. Jake laughed nervously. "Come on, man. You're just freaking yourself out." But Chris wasn't convinced. "I know what I saw." Despite Chris's unease, they eventually settled into their tents for the night. The fire crackled, casting eerie shadows on the trees. But as the hours passed, the shadows began to move unnaturally, as though they had a life of their own. Then came the sound, a low, guttural whisper, like wind moving through the trees, but darker, more menacing. It seemed to echo from all directions, growing louder with each passing second. Mia woke with a start, her heart pounding. The whispering had stopped, replaced by heavy footsteps outside her tent. She froze, barely daring to breathe. The zipper on her tent began to slide open. "Mia!" Jake's voice cut through the darkness, and the footsteps stopped. She scrambled out of the tent, finding Jake standing with a flashlight. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Before he could answer, they heard a scream, a blood-curdling cry that echoed through the forest. It was Chris. They ran toward the sound, their flashlights cutting through the thick fog. But when they reached the source, they found only Chris's flashlight lying in the dirt, flickering weakly. Blood smeared the ground, leading into the dense undergrowth. "Chris!" Jake shouted, but there was no response. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a hulking man wearing a tattered, dirt-streaked mask. His eyes glinted with malice as he raised a rusted machete, the blade dripping with blood. "Run!" Jake yelled, grabbing Mia's arm as the masked figure charged toward them. Jake and Mia sprinted through the forest, the killer's heavy footsteps pounding behind them. Branches tore at their clothes and skin as they weaved through the trees, desperately trying to escape. The whispers returned, louder now, as if the forest itself was alive and working against them. They stumbled upon an old cabin, its windows boarded up and door hanging ajar. Without thinking, they rushed inside, slamming the door behind them. The cabin was dark and musty, filled with the stench of decay. "Do you think he saw us?" Mia whispered, her voice trembling. Jake peered through a crack in the door. "I don't know, but we need to." The door exploded inward, and the killer stepped into the cabin, his machete gleaming in the faint moonlight. Jake grabbed a broken chair and swung it at the killer, but the man was unnaturally strong. He shoved Jake aside with ease, sending him crashing into the wall. Mia screamed, backing into a corner as the killer advanced. Just as the blade was about to fall, Jake lunged at the man, tackling him to the ground. "Run, Mia," he shouted. Mia hesitated for a moment, tears streaming down her face, before bolting out of the cabin. She didn't look back, even as Jake's screams echoed through the trees. Mia made it back to the trailhead just as dawn broke, her body shaking with exhaustion and terror. She flagged down a passing car, babbling incoherently about the killer in the woods. The authorities searched the forest but found no trace of Jake, Chris, or the killer. The only thing they discovered was a blood-stained mask lying by the lake. Weeks later, Mia returned to her apartment, trying to rebuild her life. But one night, as she lay in bed, she heard it, the low, guttural whisper, and then the heavy footsteps,